soaring right across the board.
That is an interesting thing, because I'd want to be staying in the air conditioning.
Yeah, I would too, but I guess it just aggravates people. They get very short-tempered, and I know the police aren't too happy either because they're wearing the Kevlar vests, the bulletproof vests under their uniforms, and that can't be comfortable. So if you're in the heat and a cop pulls you over, be polite because the last thing you want to do is aggravate a police officer.
That is true. So okay, let's talk about, since you just mentioned the law. What type of lawyer are you, and let's start with the easy stuff. No.
I'm sorry?
Let's start with the easy stuff. Let's start with the law stuff.
Okay, before we get into the metaphysical end of things. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I've also practiced in criminal, not just criminal law, but in personal injury as well. So I've done everything from like misdemeanors up to murder cases, and then in accident cases, I've dealt with let's say whippies and slippies, whiplash, falls, but all the way up to wrongful death. And as a lawyer, I've seen a lot of people's lives shattered by the death of a loved one, which is what brings me to the work I do as a medium and the grief work. But I know you want to talk more about my work as an attorney first.
Yeah, well, that's where did that come? Where did the interest come from for that? I mean, you wanted to do that for quite a while, to go through all the schooling and stuff. So where did that moment say, I want to become a lawyer?
I was pretty young when I decided that I wanted to go into law. I always found it fascinating. I enjoy public speaking. I enjoy instructing people in various things. And I always thought I might end up in teaching, but I remember when I was in college, I was about 18, and I interned at the Legal Aid Society of Orange County in Orlando, Florida, home of the famous or infamous Casey Anthony trial. But
that's a whole other subject for another day.
yeah, that's a whole. I mean, I think we've all been Casey Anthony to death. It's like, she's just a crazy sociopath who murdered her kid and got away with it. But anyway, I digress. But I found it very fascinating being able to help people, and I was really drawn to the criminal aspects because even though we were not a criminal organization, or one that represented people for crimes, because it was legal aid. So basically, we helped indigent people, poor people, with their legal problems. But one day, the supervisor said, Mark is doing such a great job, let's send him on the jail run, which I thought would be real exciting. Well, what I didn't know is that all the attorneys on staff couldn't stand going to the jail. So here I am, I'm 18 years old, and I'm trotting off to Orange County Jail to talk to convicts. And in my first interview, I'm sitting across the table from this inmate, and there's no plexiglass, there's no chicken wire. I mean, I'm in a room with this guy, and he looks me in the eye and he goes, "They said I wired a woman up like a turkey and cut her up into little bits, but I didn't." And I'm sitting there going, "Oh my God!" I mean, I'm just a teenager, and he's going on and on about how he was accused of murdering this woman, and he kept coming up with why he didn't do it. And so I said, yeah, but I'm not here for your criminal problems. And what it was, he was going through a divorce case. Go figure. And
no, I don't see a correlation there at all, but okay. I'll let you finish.
I know. I'm thinking, what woman could possibly fall asleep next to you? But that's where I learned how to speak to people who are criminals, because as an attorney, you speak in three different ways. There's the way that we talk to everyday people, like we're talking right now. It's conversational, and then there's the way we talk to judges and other lawyers. That's where we use the $1.25 words about, well, it is preposterous to be presumptuous and precipitate, and all those kind of words. And then there's the way that you talk to your criminal clients. Now, these people are not stupid by any stretch of the imagination. They're street smart, but you have to sprinkle in some colorful metaphors sometime, because if you get a little bit too, I don't want to say snooty, but yeah, snooty, then they have a hard time relating to you. And I've represented people that, guys in biker gangs and people accused of murder and drug dealers, and you've got to be able to communicate to them directly in a way that they'll understand. And also, you've got to build a rapport with them. So that can be very interesting.
I bet. I can't imagine some of the stuff that you've had to hear or try to process for your mind of cases and people telling you stories. And
oh, I remember when I went into private practice, I was about 25 years old. I was really young when I went to law school. I graduated, I had just barely turned 24 years old, and then I was a prosecutor for 2 years, and I guess I was probably about 26 or 27 when this happened, and I'm working for this private law firm. It was a small firm. It only had about 5 or 6 lawyers in it, and this guy came to see me, and he's sitting there, and he's real freaky. He's like twitching, and he's got all these tics and twitches, which is the side effect of somebody who's done a lot of cocaine or a lot of amphetamines, because basically you burn out your nervous system, so you start getting all these fidgets and twitches and all this. And I'm looking at his rap sheet, and he was acquitted of murder, and I mean there's just all these really horrible crimes he was accused of, and he was making me real nervous. And he says he was accused of cultivating marijuana. He was growing a bunch of weed in a field next to his house. So I quoted him. I forget what it was. I'm just going to say this out of thin air. I go $10,000, because I knew that the senior partners were like, that's a big case. It's it's a form of trafficking, and they'd want a lot of money and blah blah blah. And so he left, and I figured, all right, well, now I don't have to worry about him. Well, he comes back the next day, and he comes in with this grocery bag, and he sits down and he dumps it out on my desk, and it's all this wet, muddy money. And I'm looking at it, and there's like, well,
well, there we go. I guess we'll have to call him back. He just beeped out on me. We'll try that. We'll try him right back right now. Cell phones, he's on one, I'm on one. So, welcome to the Malliard Report. Of course, this is always the fun part of the interview, where we play doo 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 doo. So that's the calling. Let's hope it really is. Always fun, fun, fun. Let's see what's going on here. Calling. Clicking. Okay, we'll give that a. Come on, give that a second. Give him a second. We'll call him back here. So I hope you're enjoying the interview so far with Mark Anthony. His book is coming out here in October 8th. He just told me, "Never Letting Go: Healing Grief with Help from the Other Side." We're going to get into that whole topic here, but it's interesting to hear his stories as a lawyer, and I'm hoping you all can follow the connection that he's going to make to the other side and the paranormal here in a little bit. So with that being said, I'm going to try one more time here. If not, I'm going to play a song. So we're going to give him one more try here, and then we'll play a song if he doesn't answer or if his phone doesn't work. Hey,
Jim.
That's okay. Okay, so he brought a bag in to your office with wet money.
Yeah, he brought a bag in my office, and he dumped out all this wet muddy money. And after he left, the senior partner came in, who's this older Jewish gentleman, and he's like, "Oh my God." He goes, "What are we going to do with that money?" And the other senior partner walks in and he goes, "We're going to have to launder it." He's making a joke. So we're in the bathroom, we're washing off $10,000 worth of, and it's all wet, and one of the secretaries had a hair dryer, so we're trying to dry it. And I'll never forget taking it to the bank, and it's all damp, and they're all looking at me at the bank like, what's going on here? And it just turned out to be a very interesting case. And I was able actually to get the gentleman, the charges dropped against him, because it's a long story, but the state couldn't prove that he was growing on property that he was connected to. So basically, he lived next door to a vacant field that was a marijuana farm, and since he didn't own the property, the police couldn't prove that he was the one growing it.
Wow.
Which, as his lawyer, I'll have to say, no, he wasn't, but...
I can read between the lines there and see. I can put the actual pieces together, but... well, I've got one more lawyer question to ask you. I noticed in your bio that
Sure.
you mentioned the Supreme Court. What is that like?
Well, I have not argued a case before the U.S. Supreme Court, but I have been to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay.
So basically, I've gone through the training and the application to be certified to argue cases before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, what's that process like even? That seems mind-blowing to me. I can't even imagine taking that step, so...
No, it's really fascinating. I've been up there and I've seen some of the proceedings, and it's kind of cool. I mean, this is like if you look at our legal system as a sort of quasi-religion, these are the high priests and priestesses because, quite frankly, the buck does stop there. I mean, when the Supreme Court makes a decision on an interpretation of the law, I mean, that's it. And very few other countries in the world have anything like that, outside of maybe Great Britain and like Australia, Canada, New Zealand, where through an appellate decision, through a Supreme Court decision, law is created. And we get criticized by other countries that think that that's what they call rule or law by judge. Like, how can the judge make up a law? But if you think about it, we've had several laws which have been passed in this country which are very unfair. Let's take the segregation cases. At one time, it was legal to have restrooms for African Americans and restrooms for European Americans. So white and black people couldn't, use the same drinking fountain or the same bathroom, or blacks had to sit on the back of the bus and what have you. And it was not the legislature or the Congress of the United States that overturned that. It was a Supreme Court decision, which led to a whole slew of decisions. So there have been a lot of injustices which have been corrected by that. So that's one of the things that attracted me to applying to the U.S. Supreme Court for membership. And the direction my career is going in now, because I'm doing so much work in metaphysics and now that I'm a published author, I don't know if I will have the time or energy to put into arguing a case before the U.S. Supreme Court, but one never knows.
I was going to say, it's something that you've got, at least it's a feather in your cap if you want to do it.
It is, and some of my friends have argued cases before. They call them the Supremes. And I'll tell you what, though, they can be pretty vicious, the Supreme Court, because what happens when you're arguing an appeal, and I have argued appeals, you're before the appellate court, and in let's say the Fifth District Court of Appeal here in Florida, there's 3 judges that would be on the panel, and then the higher up you go, let's say to federal, there'll be 5, and so on and so forth. But the U.S. Supreme Court has 9 justices on it. And so you get up and you say, okay, this is the case of blah, 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 and this is why we're appealing. And they begin to ask you questions. Let me tell you, they're not friendly questions. You would have us believe this. You would have us believe that. What is your authority for that, and why? And these men and women are very well versed in the case, and they're going to be rough on you. And they're going to be rough on the opposition as well, because they want to get to the heart of the matter. They want to know what the issues are and why they should rule in your favor or against you. And so it's really a very fascinating process. What I find is a lot of inexperienced lawyers take it to heart. They get personal. Oh, they were mean to me. No, they're not being mean to you. It's business. It's nothing personal. So you've got to get that out of the way and just listen to what they're saying and give them answers in a very logical fashion.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing their job. They've only got so much time to handle that case, and they've got to get it knocked out as quick as they can. I mean, I know.
Oh, I've seen, when I first started practicing law in the county that I live in, Florida, there was a bunch of judges from another era, shall we say. These old,
these same people that don't let me. These same people that don't like me investigating their houses, or even thinking about it, or mentioning it in public.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, these judges would rip you, apart, and there were some of them that felt that, well, women shouldn't be lawyers, which is, arcane and primitive thinking at its worst. And there was this one judge, and he's passed away since this time. He used to love to try to make female attorneys cry. But he was no picnic for male attorneys either, because when he'd say, boy, approach the bench, and you'd walk up there, if you put your hands on, when I say the bench, it's the area that the judge sits on, and it's like a podium around the judge, and if you put your hands up on his desk, he would take his gavel and hit your hand. You will not touch it. And behavior like that is ridiculous. And it's really nice because now you have a whole new breed of judges that don't have those arcane, chauvinistic, tendencies. So I see the practice of law evolving in a much more positive way.
That's craziness, but I can see it. I can see where, like I said, the old guard around here and the old paranormal thing. So I totally believe it, but it's still crazy to think about happening in a professional setting.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of those attitudes, they still exist in some ways, but I do think it's changing. I see that when I first started practicing law, it was roughly 1/3 of the attorneys were women. And now I read a statistic recently that over 50% of all the lawyers coming to the system are women. It's closer to like 55, maybe even 60%. So women have definitely caught up. I mean, we've got several female judges in the circuit that I practice in, and to me, it's I've worked with female attorneys. I've had female bosses in my life, and I don't think it's any big deal. But the generation or two before me, that was looked at as a very odd thing.
Yeah, I can imagine so. Okay, so let's shift gears here. It's almost halfway through the interview. We better get on it if we're going to talk about the other side of things. So where did the medium skills start picking up in your life? When did you start noticing that?
About 4 years, when I was about 4 years old, and I had all these quote-unquote invisible friends that they may not have been visible to most people, but fortunately for me, both of my parents could see them because both of my parents had mediumistic ability, my dad and particularly my mother. So I was kind of like that little kid in that movie The Sixth Sense that went around, I see dead people and that sort of thing. But I was really fortunate was that my family is full of psychics. So they didn't think it was weird, and they didn't chastise me for it, although Dad didn't want me talking about it outside of the family. He says people will think you're crazy. In fact, his sister, my aunt, in the early 1950s, she was committed to a mental institution because of this. And it was, to me, one of the great tragedies in my family because this woman was not only a medium, but she could predict the future with pinpoint accuracy. And her husband was rather religious, and he thought that this was a bad thing, so he had her committed and subjected to electroshock therapy until she stopped seeing these things. To me, that was a terrible, terrible crime committed against her. But I grew up in an environment where seeing spirits was pretty much as normal as seeing the neighbors.
It's a good thing, because I hear stories about people that had moments when they were kids, and then they got socialized out of them or taught it was just imaginary, just leave it go, just don't talk about it, let it go. So it's good that you grew up in a family that believed and also, how do I want to say this, helped you along your way. Well,
they did, particularly my mother. She and I, it was really kind of cool because as I got older, let's say when I was in my 20s, when I graduated law school, we'd go out to lunch and we'd sit there and look at people's auras. You know how like people, sometimes you go and you people watch, which can be very fascinating.
Yes, it can be.
Yeah. Well, we would look at people's auras, like look at that one, and it was quite a lot of fun. And Mom would talk about seeing spirits and all that, and she was extremely highly, very, very highly evolved. And as I started practicing law, I was kind of almost suppressing that ability, but you cannot suppress an ability like that for very long. And then it started intensifying as I got a little bit older, and then I realized I needed to use it because it made me a better lawyer when I did.
That's where I was just headed. How is this ability? Okay, let's start with this question. Is there ever been a negative reaction when you told somebody in the legal field that this is what you can do?
Yes, there has been. I've started a new job earlier this year. I'm working for the government now, a government agency, and I wasn't even on the job 3 weeks when one of my boss's political adversaries leaked it to a television station that I was a psychic. So they show up at the courthouse. That's where my office is, in a 5-story building, and they want to know why the taxpayers are paying for a psychic. And I said, well, they're not paying for a psychic. They're paying for me because I'm a member of the U.S. Supreme Court Bar, Florida Bar, Federal Bar. I'm Oxford educated, and I graduated with honors, and I've been managing law firms for 2 decades. And so the taxpayers are paying for a psychic. And I said, as I just explained to you, no. I said, these are my protected First Amendment religious and spiritual beliefs. Well, this hits national news, which was good for my book, which is coming out in October, because my publisher's making it the #1 title for the fall catalog. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So I started getting a lot of negative comments. I started getting hate mail. People writing terrible things about me in the blogs, making up things about me that, you know, they don't know me and all this. But, you know, I didn't let it bother me because I was always prepared for this. And what happened was lots of lawyers started coming to me for readings. I've had Catholic priests come to me, Baptist ministers, people of many different faiths. And here's what I can say, Jim, is I don't really care what a bunch of lawyers or what a bunch of people or what a bunch of religious fanatics may say. When I'm sitting across the table doing a reading for somebody who's lost a loved one, let's say a parent who's lost a little girl, and I'm able to make a connection, and I can see in that person's eyes a little bit of the pain coming out of them, then what a bunch of fanatics or skeptics have to say doesn't mean a thing to me, because that's not what's important. What's important is about helping people cope with the loss of a loved one. That's why I have this ability, and that's what I use it for.
Yeah, let's talk about the book here. Okay, so we just never letting go, helping the others, helping heal from the other side. How does that? Where did the book come from? Let's start there. What made you want to write a book about it? Because you've been doing it. I mean, but why a book?
It's when my mother died, which, interestingly enough, her birthday would be this week. And when my mother died, it was so devastating for me. And people say, yeah, but you can see spirits, so it shouldn't be that bad. And it's like, yes, I can see spirits. Yes, I can communicate with spirits. But that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt when somebody I love dies. Because, you know, what we miss when a loved one dies is the physical presence of that person. You know, my mother lived about a mile from me, so we'd get together quite often. And, in fact, we had this really fascinating psychic connection. I would be at work and I'm having a really bad day, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And the phone would ring my mom and say, you're having a bad day, aren't you? And I'd go, yeah, how'd you know? And she goes, Mark. And I said, well, yeah, I get that. And the interesting thing, or I don't want to even say interesting, the beautiful thing, was the day before she passed, I was at my office and I kept thinking spaghetti, spaghetti, spaghetti. So I picked up the phone, I called Mom. She goes, oh, hey, honey, I just made spaghetti for lunch. Why don't you come over for lunch? So I went over to her house, and we had a really great lunch and talking and laughing, and we were making plans for the holidays. And before I left, she goes, I want you to know something. I love you very much. And I'm so proud that you're my son. And I said, Mom, I love you too. And I hugged her and I kissed her. And that was the last time I ever saw her, because the next morning I was in court, and I was pulled out of court so that I could be told that my mother had died in her sleep earlier that morning. And I know now that on some level she knew that she was going to die soon, and she wanted to make sure that she said goodbye to me. And that's one of the things that I try to impress upon people is always say I love you before you hang up or before you leave someone that you love. And this goes even if you're having an argument with that person. Because let's face it, the people who can really make us aggravated are the people who love us, because they know how to punch all our buttons. You know, and they do. Yeah, but wouldn't you rather have the last words you said to somebody here in the physical world to be, I love you? And I write about this in my book, Never Letting Go, because in one story, and the stories in the book are based on real people, real readings, real life and death situations. And this one woman was haunted by guilt and remorse and anger, because the last thing her father said to her was, well, you're my least favorite child, but at least you're here, before he slipped into a coma. Now, granted, he had psychological problems, and he was not a nice person. That doesn't matter. That was still her daddy. And her daddy said, "You're my least favorite child, but at least you're here." And so in the course of the reading, her father came through. And it's interesting because spirits communicate from the other side very much like they did when they were here. So he was short, he was abrupt, and it was all like very clipped tones, but he apologized, which was something he never did in life. And that meant the world to this woman, to hear that not only did her father say he was sorry for being so difficult, but he also told her, "I love you," from the other side. And that's a wonderful thing to hear.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't imagine being in that position where a parent said that to me, and then having that being the last thought in your head as they've slipped away. So,
it's very overwhelming, and because I'm a criminal defense lawyer, it's a lot of men come to me for readings, and men, and Jim. All right, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
How many women do you know, or that are in your life, have women's intuition?
All of them.
All of them. Okay. Now, women are more likely to embrace their feelings and display their emotions. And if we go back to high school, a girl breaks her fingernail the day of the prom. Oh my God! Like all her friends come to her aid, like oh my God, and there's this whole support system. All right. You and I are in high school where it's PE, and we get tackled in a football game, and it hurts. Because getting tackled hurts, especially when there's like 5 guys on top of you.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts real bad. Do you cry?
No.
Of course not. Why?
The macho, tough male agenda.
Exactly. We are taught to suppress and repress and control our emotions. So while it may seem that women are more psychic or psychically oriented or predisposed towards this, and intuition is because it's an emotional thing. But if we take that same concept and apply it to men, now you don't want to talk about men's intuition or expressing your feelings because of the whole macho bravado thing. If we change that term to instinct, now we're getting somewhere, aren't we? Instinct.
Well, somewhere,
Rambo. Yeah, Rambo has instinct. Indiana Jones has instinct. G.I. Joe has instinct. All the cops I know, all the military guys I know, always tell me instinct has saved their life. All right, well, guess what? That's an emotionally based activity. It is a psychic and intuitive activity. It's just when we put a socially acceptable term on it, then men can embrace it. And so that's one of the things I try to teach men is, at the risk of sounding like Yoda from Star Wars, trust your feelings. It's like you have to trust your feelings. And it's very important. I mean, as a lawyer, I get into situations, and in negotiating with people, they may be saying everything I want to hear, but I know on another level they're trying to rip me off or to take advantage of me. And whenever I go with my gut feeling or my instinct, I'm always happy that I did. And when men start to realize that by embracing your instinct, then you are using your own innate psychic ability to your advantage.
I was talking to somebody about asking for directions, why men never do that. Because we have this instinct, we know where we're going.
Exactly.
And plus, have you ever asked for directions at a gas station anyways? They never know. Apparently they're all like dropped in from some other country to work there that shift.
I know, it's amazing. I was in Boston, and I was at a gas station, and I pulled up, and this voice comes over the loudspeaker. And it's like, what? And I had no idea what the guy was saying. I go, look, I'm sorry, but I'm from the United States. I only speak English. You must pay before you pump the gas, And it was funny because I was with a friend from Germany, and he goes, I will handle this. And he goes, and he comes out and he goes, you should be ashamed. You live in America. You should speak English so people could understand you. So Not one of my more stellar moments, but it was funny watching all that happen.
I can imagine so. So let's get back to the book. How long did that take from like concept to where we're at today? How long has that process been? What's that process been like?
It's actually quite an ordeal. The book went to the publisher 2010, and I started writing it. I started making notes on it in late 2006, early 2007, and I started writing it in earnest towards the end of 2007. So basically, it took about 2.5 years to write, from notes to finished product. But that's writing the book isn't the hard part. Getting a literary agent and getting a publisher, that's the difficult part. A lot of people these days are self-publishing, and I don't discourage people from doing that, but I wanted to go the professional route, and I wanted to have my book published by a major publisher, which I have, which is Llewellyn Worldwide Publishing. And they got my manuscript, and then I got a phone call. And it was about 2 months after I'd submitted it. I was like, gee, I wonder what happened. And the editor calls me, and she said, well, I just finished reading your manuscript, and I cried all the way through it. And I'm like, well, please tell me it's not because it's like the worst thing you've ever read. And she goes, no. She said, this is so touching. You've made so many points that come so clear. And she goes, I read stuff like this all the time, and she goes, this book's going to help a lot of people, so we're signing you. And I'll never forget, that had to be one of the happiest phone calls of my life.
Yeah, I can imagine so, because, I mean, it took you 2.5 years to write it, and then you were waiting and waiting. So to have that closure on that, I mean, well, it's not closure, I guess it's an opening, so to speak.
No, yeah, and then there's a whole different process. Once the publisher accepts the book, they go through a whole editing and critical analysis and envisioning what the cover and what the title. The title I chose was not initially Never Letting Go, but that's something that we agreed upon because that's one of the themes of the book. And in healing from grief, it's very important to let go of the sorrow associated with the death, but never let go of the love that you have for the person who died. And so that's where the title Never Letting Go comes from. And let go of sorrow, hold on to love is a message I received actually from my mother on the other side. Because I was having a really rough time after she passed. And my mediumistic abilities intensified off the scale. I mean, they were always there, but after she passed, it just intensified. And what happened was I finally stopped rejecting and resisting it and rationalizing it. And once I stopped doing that, it became crystal clear. Or, well, I don't want to say crystal clear because spirit contact is clear, but it's not always as readily transparent as we'd like it to be.
Right. Oh, yeah, I know that. Because, like I said, I'm a paranormal investigator, so it's often more of a wild goose chase at times than it is like we're talking.
It is, and I got a question for you.
Sure.
Do you think that hauntings, let's say a building that is allegedly haunted, is that an intelligent, immortal living spirit, or is it a residual energy signature?
I think there has to be a mixture of both, because the energy has to be there from the residual haunts of people, but I think there has to be an intelligent one there to draw somebody into it to come feel it out.
And do you well, because I tend to agree with you. Do you think that the intelligence is stuck there or voluntarily lingers there?
That's where I get confused at, because I don't know if it's stuck there, or sometimes I feel like I bring people with me, like people that are like spirit guides and other things. So I don't know if they're even there, or if somebody finds them there, they have that moment of clarity being there because of all the extra energy that's around them to help them see it.
Well, from my own experience, I can say that we always bring people with us because we've always got a group of spirits around us, and it can get kind of crowded at times. I mean, crowded in a metaphorical sense. But I've been called to investigate quote-unquote hauntings, and some of it doesn't feel like there's an intelligence there. I feel a presence, and because matter retains energy and memory, so I think I'm picking up on a residual energy signature. But I've been to other places where there was an intelligent spirit there, and in fact, in Never Letting Go, I read about I was called to the scene of a murder. My secretary, I get back from the office. I get back to the office from court, and my secretary's crying hysterically, and I'm like, "What's wrong?" And she said, "My husband just witnessed a murder, and he worked for a moving company, and they were in an upscale neighborhood, and they were loading up a moving van, and at the house next door to them, he thought these two guys were playing paintball, until he realized one of them shot the other one in the head 5 times, and he's like, 'Oh my God, that's not paint.' And it's 40 feet away from them. So, and the murderer took off and jumped in the car and drove away. So, I said, we got to get to the scene, because it was an upscale neighborhood, and it sounded like a contract hit. And if it was a contract hit, I didn't want this guy's name being plastered all over the newspaper, because he was an eyewitness. So we get there, and of course there's 24 police all over the place, and more arriving. And when we get out of my car, my secretary and I are walking up, and and all the cops know me, and all of a sudden I start shaking, and I feel searing waves of pain. And my secretary looks at me, and she goes, "Oh my God, you're doing like that thing you do, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Well, I could see the spirit of a young man running and running and running, and he was frantic. And he didn't realize he was dead yet. And he comes running up to me because he realizes I can see him. And I said, "Let me deal with this." And I walk over to the shade of this tree, and I said, and he was talking so fast I couldn't even keep up with him. I said, "Listen to me. You've got to let go. You've got to go into the light." And his eyes fixed on mine, and all of a sudden he nodded yes, and he pixelated, like his image pixelated. Well, I break out in a sweat, like when you spike from a fever. And so I walk over to my secretary, and she's with her husband, and some detectives are talking to him. And so I figure, well, let me go be, lawyerly now. And so I said to them, I go, "So was the victim a Hispanic male, about 5'8", clean-shaven, wearing camouflage clothing?" And they look at me, and one of the detectives says, "How do you know what the victim looked like? The body's been secured." And all of a sudden I realized, uh-oh, now they think I have something to do with the murder. And I'm like, "Oh my God." And it was so funny because my secretary goes, she was great. She steps right in between. She goes, "Well, my husband told him what the victim looked like on his cell phone when we were driving over here." And they go, "Oh," and they kind of back off, and I look at her, and I go, "Thank you," and she's like, "No problem," like that. Well, the fascinating thing was about a month later, I was out at lunch, and I saw a newspaper, and there's a picture of these 3 guys on the cover, on the front page, and I recognized one of them. I'm looking at him, I go, "Who is that guy? Is it one of my clients?" Long story short, it was the spirit that I saw. It was his picture, and it was a story about the murder. It was a grow house, and they were all related to each other, and something went wrong, and one of them went berserk, and he murdered this guy, then he went somewhere else, murdered another guy, and then blew his brains out. But it was him. It was him.
That's incredible. I mean, to see it that clear, and then have him move on, I guess is where I want to go with that. Right in front of you. That has to be an incredible experience that you'll probably never forget, huh?
No, and it was fascinating enough to write about it in Never Letting Go, because there's a chapter that I wrote in there called Sometimes They Need Our Help. And there's a disagreement between myself and some of my colleagues, because I study a lot with mediums from Great Britain at the Arthur Findlay College for the Advancement of Psychic Science, a.k.a. Hogwarts for Psychics. And they say that, "Oh, well, we really can't help them, and to try to do so is interfering in the will of God," and so on and so forth. But I've been in a number of situations where the spirit seemed like he or she either didn't realize that they were dead, or for whatever reason, they seemed to be holding on to this dimension. when there's really no reason for them to, so that they can let go and they can ascend into the light, or however it works.
That's, yeah, I can't imagine, if they're there and they can use your guidance, I can't see the problem with that. Now, telling them, giving them, going out looking for them and saying, you know, this is what you should do, I don't agree with that. But if they're there and they take your advice, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, there's a restaurant. It's in an old building. It's like 100 years old or something, however old, and it has this reputation for being haunted. And everybody goes there because, ooh, it's haunted. And the food's actually very good. And it was funny because the last time I was there, I was with a friend of mine who is a psychic medium as well, and she's a real trip. Her name's Morgana Starr. She's great. If you ever get her on your show, you'll love her. And I go, Morgana, I'm not feeling that there's any presence here anymore. And she goes, shh. I go, why? What happened? Well, long story short, a colleague of ours went to this restaurant and encountered the spirit and said, you can go into the light, and so the spirit left. Well, the manager and the owner of the restaurant found out, and they go, what in God's name did you do that for? And they go, what do you mean? She goes, what do you mean? It's like, you got rid of this ghost. The ghost is good for business. Haunting is good for, so they threw this whole fit, and they just made her promise that you will never tell anyone that you got rid of our ghost. And to me, that's hysterically funny, but it's kind of selfish on their part.
Yeah, there's a lot of places that like to make money off the haunting they have, so.
Well, sure, everyone wants to go and get goosebumps and chills and see if they feel anything. So I always get a big kick out of it, and I always call Morgana and go, hey, you want to go to dinner at so-and-so? And she starts laughing.
Of course, I missed the punchline of that joke. The food was to die for, but anyways.
You know what? I have to use that one now. That's hysterical.
Yeah, but you said the food was really good. I was then a few minutes into your story. I'm like, to die for, of course, the haunting, yes, and so. Okay, we're getting down to like 10 minutes left. So let's get the book out there one more time. Tell me the title. Tell me the date. Tell me all that fun stuff. Tell me where I can find you and all that good stuff. We'll get that out of the way now.
Oh, super! Never Letting Go is the name of the book, and the subtitle is Heal Grief with Help from the Other Side. And what's nice about Never Letting Go is that it's for anyone who's ever lost a loved one. It will teach you how to recognize when your loved ones in spirit are near you. It will guide you to help you find your path through grief. It is healing because it will provide evidence of the other side, and it's inspirational in that it provides healing messages from the other side. And information doesn't change people, but stories do. So Never Letting Go is a collage of stories to illustrate various aspects of getting through the grieving process. And the real heroes in the book are the spirits, because they're the ones who reach out from the other side. They're like cosmic lifeguards that dive in to save us when we're drowning in sadness. And to find out about the book and how to order it and to watch the video about the book, it's only a couple minutes long, is at my website, which is www.neverlettinggo.com. And I highly recommend the video on the book because it'll give you a good idea of the voice that I write in, and the tone and the tempo of the book and how it's a healing nature. So the name of the book is Never Letting Go, and the website is neverlettinggo.com.
There you go, and that'll be coming out October 8th?
Correct, and you can order Never Letting Go now. So when you go to my website, neverlettinggo.com, there'll be logos for Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and Llewellyn. If you click on one of those, it'll take you right to the page. You can order it. If you order it on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, if you order it now, you'll save 30% off the cover price if you pre-order it. So a lot of people I know, in fact, it's been selling so heavily right now. My publisher has been very, very impressed and because of the nature of the book and the broad-based appeal. It is the #1 title, the lead title for the fall catalog of Llewellyn Publishing, and it is projected to be a bestseller.
Well, there you go. And it sounds, 30% off, now will be the time to buy it, even though you can't get your hands on it until for a couple more months.
Yeah, but if you order it now, it's like when it comes out, you'll be getting it in the mail like right away. And hey, we're in bad economic times. You can save 30% on anything. Go for it.
That's what I'm thinking. So tell me, okay, let's talk about readings, because I noticed that on your page too. How does that process go?
A lot of people contact me for readings. I get numerous requests every day, and I can do them over the telephone or in person. Telephone is easier simply because unless you live in the area that I live in, one-on-one reading is not practical. And what I do is I connect to spirits on the other side. And when I call you to schedule the reading, I'll go through a process and explain to you how it works. And there's nothing to be scared of. It's not like Hollywood where boogeymen and all that sort of thing are going around. My readings are always very upbeat and positive. They can be very heart-wrenching at times, but I'm trained to make sure that it is the most healing and beneficial process possible.
And that's all on the Never Letting Go site too? Is that where I've seen that?
That's correct. It's
okay.
Schedule a reading. Yeah, there's a contact mark section, and the way, if you want to schedule a reading, click on Schedule a Reading. Some people go through contact mark and they start asking me, how much does a reading was entail, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, if you went to schedule a reading, it'll tell you everything. Because some people have other questions, and that's how the media gets hold of me and my publicist on booking events for me.
There you go. So, there's something else I was going to ask you. Oh, just general knowledge advice, I guess, because I was going to ask about writing advice and advice for being a psychic and lawyer advice, but we'll just go general knowledge advice here for going forward for people.
On writing?
Yeah, we'll start with writing. I have them all pegged out here, so.
You have to love what you're writing about. You have to be inspired about it, and you have to be dedicated. And to follow the words of Winston Churchill, never give up, never give up, never give up. Because a lot of people say, well, I want to write a book. And they sit down and they go, wow, this is a lot of work. You've got to be organized. You've got to figure out, all right, where am I going? What am I doing with this? How is this going to appeal to the reader? And once you get your organizational structure down, then you start writing. And get the story down, get the ideas down, and then you can always go back and tweak it and work on it. Mario Puzo, who wrote The Godfather, he's one of my inspirations as far as a writer. He said that the secret to good writing is rewriting. So let's say you write a story. Okay, well, let's take the story I just told about going to the scene of the murder and the spirits running around. All right, you write that down, and then you go back and you start working on the grammar, working on the dialogue, making sure you get it as accurate as possible, trying to put it in with feeling, make sure the transitions are there, and then later on, worry about the grammar and all that. Get the story down first. You can always fix the grammar second. Because what I found was, if you start getting bogged down on the technical issues, you're going to lose the heart of it. And sometimes you get hit by a wave of inspiration. You gotta go with it. So that's some of the advice I can give on writing a book.
How about being a psychic? What advice can you give, even me, for just trying to become more in tune with the other side?
Trust your feelings, or trust your instinct. What happens is when you begin to receive information on a vibrational level, because spirits are energy, and even residual energy signatures, that's a vibration that you're tuning into. What you have to do is realize that your first impressions are the correct ones. Because what happens is, if Jim starts cross-examining the information or second-guessing or making assumptions, what's happening is Jim is putting Jim in the way of the information. And what you've got to do is take yourself out of the equation, let the information flow, and go with it. And then that's going to be the more accurate. When you see inexperienced psychics or mediums, you find out that they make a lot of assumptions. For example, I was working with actually a very well-known psychic, and we were doing readings on her television show. And there was this guy there, and anyway, he said his father came through, was a police officer, and she goes, he was shot to death. And the guy goes, no. She goes, well, he was shot to death in a bar. He goes, no, he was doing shots in a bar when he got a heart attack and died. Now, what happened there was that psychic, she was picking up on, he was a police officer, she got that. He died in a bar, she got that. But because he was a police officer, when she heard the word shot, she automatically assumed he was shot as in murdered. And that wasn't the case. And so what happens is when that information starts coming through, you don't jump to an assumption. You work with the spirit, let the message resonate within you, and 99 times out of 100 you're going to get a much more accurate, if not 100% accurate message coming from the spirit. I hope that makes sense.
It does, it does. Actually, you know what? I want to thank you for being on my show, because we're almost pretty much out of time. Who am I kidding? So I want to thank you, and I'm going to send you an email here shortly, and we'll try to get you on after the book comes out so we can talk about it again.
That sounds great.
Maybe do some readings that night?
That would be great. I look forward to it. It's always a pleasure, and I enjoy working with you.